On a cold winter morning in the heart of Milbrook, Massachusetts, the town square stood still under a blanket of snow. The only sign of life was the slow march of time across the frozen streets. But amidst the quiet, a peculiar sight had drawn the attention of the locals for weeks. A German shepherd, weary yet steadfast, sitting at the edge of a rusted sewer grate. His amber eyes were fixed, unwavering, as if guarding a secret only he could understand. Every day, without fail, the dog, known only to them as Atlas, appeared precisely at dawn, taking his place beside the grate, refusing to leave until dusk painted the sky in hues of purple and gold. His ritual was met with quiet whispers from shopkeepers and concerned passers-by, who noticed his demeanor had changed. Once proud, Atlas now bore the scars of abandonment, his once majestic coat matted, his gait marked by a pronounced limp. Yet it was not his physical state that drew attention. It was his unshakable dedication, his silent vigil that seemed to carry an air of mystery. Welcome to the HeartForce channel, where you and I find more meaning in life through stories about dogs. Before we continue, please comment below and let us know where you're listening to this video. And if you have any dog stories of your own, feel free to share them with everyone. Despite the cold, Atlas never asked for food. When it was offered, he would take it, only to disappear for a brief moment before returning with an empty mouth, his eyes still locked on the grate below him. The townsfolk speculated about the strange behavior, but no one dared to venture closer. That is, until Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the town's local veterinarian, happened upon the scene one chilly December morning. What she would discover that day would challenge everything she thought she knew about love, sacrifice, and the unspoken bonds that tie us together. Dr. Sarah Mitchell's veterinary clinic was located just 2 blocks from Milbrook's town square, nestled in a converted Victorian house that had seen decades of change. She had moved to Milbrook 6 years ago, drawn to its quiet charm and the promise of a fresh start after the loss of her beloved dog, Max. The clinic was more than just a place of healing. It was a reflection of Sarah herself. Her auburn hair, streaked with premature gray, was often pulled back in a practical bun, and her green eyes, sharp and full of wisdom, held the weight of countless decisions, many of them hard, some heartbreaking. When she had lost Max 6 months ago, it felt as though part of her had gone with him. The gentle, steady presence of her Labrador retriever had seen her through many trying moments, both professional and personal. Max had been more than just a companion. He had been a co-therapist, guiding her patients through their darkest times with the same unwavering kindness he had shown her. His death in a hit-and-run accident had left a void that nothing could fill. But as she drove through Milbrook on that December morning, her mind wandered to the dog on Mason Street. The German shepherd, Atlas, had become a local legend. Sarah had heard the whispers, the dog who wouldn't leave the sewer grate, the dog who seemed to watch over something beneath the ground. She had watched him from her clinic window many times, but never dared to approach. He wasn't just a stray. The way he carried himself, his gaze so alert, his posture so commanding, spoke of a past far beyond his current circumstances. That morning, Sarah received an unexpected call. Mrs. Henderson, the elderly owner of the bakery across the street, was frantic. "Dr. Mitchell, it's Atlas. He's hurt badly. You have to come quickly." Without hesitation, Sarah grabbed her emergency kit and rushed out the door. The cold winter air nipped at her face as Mrs. Henderson hurried to explain. "He's limping, bleeding. It's bad, Dr. Mitchell." They found Atlas where he always was, at the edge of the sewer grate. But today he was different. His proud posture was gone. He lay crumpled, his breathing labored, one paw pressed tightly against his chest, as if trying to protect something even in his pain. There was a new wound on his shoulder, a deep, raw gash that looked like it had been caused by a violent encounter with another dog. Sarah knelt beside him, her breath clouding in the cold air. She examined the wound with practiced hands, noting the severity, but as she tried to coax him away from the grate to treat his injuries, he refused to move. His eyes met hers, and, for the first time, she saw something there that stopped her cold determination. It wasn't aggression. It was purpose. "Atlas," Sarah whispered, her voice soft but firm. "You're hurt. Let me help you." But Atlas didn't budge. His paw stayed firmly planted by the grate, and when Sarah tried to gently nudge him away, he raised his injured leg and touched her hand. His eyes locked onto hers, and for a fleeting moment, she understood. He wasn't trying to protect himself. He was trying to protect something or someone beneath the street. In that moment, everything changed. Sarah felt a stirring in her heart, a connection to this dog that she couldn't explain. It was the same feeling she had experienced when Max had first shown her that animals were more than just pets. They were teachers, guides, and in some cases, heroes. As Sarah treated his injuries, she made a decision. She would find out what Atlas was guarding. That night, as Sarah reflected on the events of the day, she couldn't shake the image of Atlas's eyes. They were full of intelligence, sadness, and something more, something ancient. It was clear that he was no ordinary dog. There was more to him, something hidden beneath the surface, something he wasn't ready to share yet. The next morning, she watched as Atlas returned to his post at the grate. True to his routine, he appeared at exactly 8 a.m., his gaze locked on the darkness beneath him. When Thomas Mason, the butcher, appeared with his usual offering of scraps, Atlas took the food, but he didn't eat it. Instead, he disappeared behind the nearby building, returning minutes later to take the remaining pieces. Sarah's curiosity grew. What was Atlas doing? Why wasn't he eating the food? Then she saw it. Atlas approached the grate again, and with methodical precision, he began lowering pieces of meat through the metal bars. One by one, he placed the pieces into the dark void below. When he was finished, he sat down beside the grate, waiting. A soft whimper echoed from below, and Atlas's ears perked up, his body tense with anticipation. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Atlas wasn't just feeding someone. He was taking care of something. As she watched from her clinic window, Sarah realized that Atlas was doing something no other dog in Milbrook had ever done. He wasn't just surviving. He was protecting. But what was he protecting? And why had he chosen the sewer grate as his place of vigil? She made up her mind. She had to find out. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity for Dr. Sarah Mitchell. Despite the cold and snow, she couldn't shake the mystery of Atlas's daily ritual. She had seen dogs in her practice with strange behaviors, strays who had been traumatized, abandoned, or hurt, but never had she seen such devotion. Atlas wasn't just surviving. He was protecting something, and Sarah was determined to uncover what it was. Every morning at 8 a.m., Atlas appeared by the sewer grate. Every morning, Thomas Mason, the town's butcher, would leave fresh scraps of meat for the dog. And every morning, Atlas would take a portion, disappear for a few minutes, then return to the grate to resume his vigil. No one had ever seen him eat. He didn't look for comfort or warmth from the food. It was as though he was merely fulfilling a duty, and Sarah knew that duty was far from ordinary. One chilly morning, Sarah decided to follow Atlas. She kept a safe distance as the dog moved with purpose, his limp more pronounced as he walked. Atlas had clearly seen better days, yet there was a quiet nobility in his movements. He wasn't just a dog. He was something more, something greater. As Sarah watched him disappear behind the butcher shop, she felt the weight of her own personal loss. It had been 6 months since Max had passed, and while she had moved on in many ways, there were still moments where the grief would creep in uninvited. It was in those moments that Sarah would think of Atlas, this dog who had been through so much and yet still carried himself with purpose. Sarah trailed Atlas at a respectful distance as he walked behind the shop and turned down a narrow alleyway. She kept her eyes on him, watching as he approached the familiar sewer grate. But this time, something was different. This time, Sarah saw what Atlas was guarding. As Atlas lowered his head and gently dropped the food through the grate, Sarah's heart skipped a beat. The soft whimper she had heard the day before echoed from below, followed by the faint sound of movement. Atlas's ears perked up, his body stiffening as if receiving confirmation that his offering had been accepted. In that moment, Sarah realized something she had suspected for days. Atlas wasn't just feeding strays, or animals he had found. He was keeping something alive, something that needed more than food. It needed care. It needed attention. It needed to be protected. Sarah stayed hidden in the shadows, not wanting to disturb the scene unfolding before her. She had always been a woman of science, of logic, and of reason. But what she was witnessing now didn't fit into any of her neat little boxes. The dedication of this dog, his silent watchfulness, was a form of care that transcended what most people thought animals were capable of. And the more she watched, the more she realized that Atlas wasn't just doing this for survival or out of routine. He was doing it out of a deep, unspoken bond, one that even she, as a veterinarian, couldn't fully comprehend. The next few days saw Sarah returning to the alleyway every morning, observing Atlas from a distance. Each time, she saw the same ritual unfold, Atlas feeding, waiting, and listening. But this time, she didn't just watch. She began to document everything. Her clinic journal, once a simple record of medical procedures, became a log of something far more profound. She wrote about the way Atlas approached the grate, the precision with which he fed the unseen creature below, and the way he would wait patiently for the whimpers in return. On the 5th day of her observation, Sarah was certain of one thing. Atlas was not only protecting something down there, but he was also doing so with a level of devotion that rivaled the most heroic of acts. Whatever lived beneath the street, Atlas had chosen to become its guardian. Sarah's professional curiosity grew, but so did her personal connection to this dog. She had spent years working with animals, but this was different. This wasn't just about treating an injury or administering medicine. This was about understanding a dog's purpose, about uncovering the bond between creatures that had been lost, a bond that seemed to transcend species, time, and pain. It wasn't long before Sarah decided to take action. Armed with her medical kit, she ventured to the sewer grate one evening after closing the clinic. It was then that she saw Atlas once more, sitting at his post, his body still and focused. The glow of the streetlights cast long shadows across his figure, and in the dim light, she saw something she had missed before, a scar on his right flank, a limp in his gait, a weariness that only time and experience could bring. "Atlas," Sarah whispered softly, her voice carrying over the quiet streets. "I know you're not just a stray. You've been through something. I'll help you." But Atlas didn't move. His eyes were fixed, still locked on the sewer grate below. He wasn't guarding himself. He wasn't even guarding food or shelter. He was guarding a secret, one that only he knew and one that Sarah was determined to uncover. "Can I help you?" Sarah asked, stepping closer, her hand reaching out to gently touch the dog's head. But Atlas, as if understanding her words, gave a low growl, a warning. Not an aggressive growl, but one that carried a clear message. "I'm not leaving. I'm not moving." Sarah stood still, her heart pounding in her chest. What was Atlas guarding? And why was he willing to endure so much for it? She knew the answers were just out of reach, but she also knew one thing for sure. She had to help him, whatever it took. With a deep breath, Sarah knelt beside him, her hand resting on his matted fur. "I'll be here with you," she whispered. "Together, we'll figure this out." The days following her decision to help Atlas were filled with a quiet, urgent anticipation. Sarah continued her daily observations, trying to piece together the mystery that had captivated her thoughts since the first time she saw Atlas sitting vigil by the sewer grate. She had treated hundreds of animals, strays, rescues, and those in need of care, but never had she encountered anything like this. The dog's determination, his dedication, was unlike any she had seen before. It wasn't just that Atlas was guarding the grate. It was how he did it, how he fed the unseen creature below with such care, never once taking more than what was necessary, and how he returned day after day, despite the harsh cold and his own physical pain. Atlas had suffered. His body bore the scars of his past, a gash along his right flank, a limp that told of an injury he had never fully recovered from. Yet, there was a sense of nobility about him that Sarah couldn't quite place. This wasn't just the behavior of a stray dog. This was the behavior of a dog on a mission. One morning, After days of watching Atlas and making notes in her journal, Sarah decided she could wait no longer. She had to know what lay beneath the grate, but she also knew she couldn't do it alone. This wasn't just a rescue operation. It was a mystery, and mysteries required a careful approach. She called James Wilson, the town's animal control officer, hoping that his experience might help in case the situation turned dangerous. Though she had tried to discuss her concerns with him before, he had been dismissive. "It's just a stray, Sarah," he had told her. "A dog trying to protect its turf. Nothing more." But now she knew better. "I'm telling you, James, there's something down there. I've seen it," Sarah urged as she reached him on the phone. "This dog, Atlas, he's not just feeding strays. He's guarding something." After a moment of silence, James responded with an uncertain tone. "All right, I'll meet you there, but I still think you're overthinking this. We'll bring the heavy equipment, just in case, but I don't know what we'll find." They arrived at the sewer grate at dusk, with Sarah clutching her emergency kit and James hauling his tools. The town was quiet, the streets eerily still, as if the whole world was holding its breath. Alice was already there, of course, his watchful eyes scanning the area. His gaze locked on Sarah as she approached, his body stiffening, the low growl rumbling in his throat. "It's okay, boy," Sarah spoke softly, her voice calm but resolute. "I'm not here to take away your job. I just need to know what you're protecting." For the first time, Atlas didn't growl. Instead, he stepped aside, though his eyes never left her. He wasn't leaving. He was allowing her to approach, under his watchful gaze. James stood behind Sarah, clearly unsure of what to do. "You sure about this?" he asked. Sarah nodded. "We need to find out what's down there, James. It's more than just a stray. Atlas is guarding something, and I think it's alive." Carefully, Sarah knelt beside the grate, shining her flashlight through the metal slats. At first, she saw nothing, just the darkness beneath the street. But then, a faint movement caught her eye. Her breath caught in her throat. There, in the shadows, she saw two small eyes gleaming in the dark. "It's alive," Sarah whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Her heart raced. She had been right. Alice wasn't just guarding a space. He was guarding life. "Hold on," she called to James, her voice trembling with excitement. "We need to get this grate off. Now." James hesitated, but quickly understood the urgency. Together, they worked to lift the heavy grate, the metal groaning under their combined strength. As it shifted, a soft, pitiful mewing echoed from below. "That's a cat," James exclaimed. "What the hell is a cat doing down there?" Sarah's hands shook with anticipation, but she didn't stop. She had to be sure. They lifted the grate fully, and as the light from their flashlights spread into the darkness below, they saw it. 5 tiny kittens huddled on a small ledge just below street level, their fur matted and their tiny bodies trembling. A piece of corrugated metal had been carefully placed above them, keeping them dry and protected. "Sarah, how did they get down there?" James asked, incredulous. "I don't know," Sarah replied, kneeling beside the ledge and reaching down to gently scoop the kittens into her arms. They were weak, hungry, and frightened, but they were alive. Alive because Atlas had kept them safe. But the question still lingered. How had these kittens ended up in the sewer, and why had Atlas chosen to protect them? As Sarah held the kittens, she felt a connection to them, a sense of purpose that resonated deeply within her. This wasn't just a rescue. It was something more. As she carefully examined the kittens and checked their condition, it became clear that without Atlas, they wouldn't have survived. They had been cared for in a way that was far beyond the ordinary. Atlas hadn't just fed them. He had nurtured them, offering his warmth and his protection in a place where no one else would have dared to go. And in return, they had given him something he hadn't had in a long time: purpose. Atlas had been a hero once, but now, in the quiet corners of Milbrook, he had become something even greater. He was a guardian, a protector, and a teacher, and the town was starting to realize it. The town of Milbrook was never the same after the discovery beneath the sewer grate. What had begun as a quiet mystery, a lone dog guarding the darkness, had turned into something much larger something that would bring the community together in a way no one had expected. Dr. Sarah Mitchell spent the next few days working tirelessly to care for the kittens. Atlas had done everything he could to keep them alive, but they still needed medical attention. The smallest one, a fragile white kitten with patches of gray, was in critical condition. She had been the weakest of the five, struggling to maintain her body temperature and breathing with shallow, labored gasps. Sarah worked through the nights, monitoring their progress, and with each passing hour, she marveled at the bond between Atlas and the kittens. He never left their side, his eyes never straying from the recovery room window. He was more than just a caretaker. He was a symbol, a reminder that love and dedication could transcend species, that even in the darkest places, there was hope. As Sarah worked with the kittens, word of the rescue spread quickly through the town. People began showing up at her clinic, offering help in ways she never imagined. Thomas Mason, the butcher who had first noticed Atlas's feeding ritual, brought over a truckload of supplies for the animals. Mrs. Henderson, the bakery owner, sent over fresh pastries for the staff, her way of showing support. And even James Wilson, the animal control officer who had once dismissed Sarah's concerns, began offering his help in any way he could. It wasn't just that they wanted to help Atlas and the kittens. It was the way the entire town seemed to rally behind them. People who had once kept to themselves began talking, sharing stories about the dog who had become their hero. The butcher, Thomas, who had been the first to offer Atlas food, stood before the town council one evening and spoke passionately about the dog's selfless actions. If a dog like this, Thomas said, his voice steady, can show this much dedication, then we owe it to ourselves to do better. We need to care for the strays in this town, and not just the ones we think are worthy of it. Every life has value. Alice has shown us that. The town council, hearing this plea, began considering changes to the town's animal welfare policies. They set up a community fund to help support strays, ensuring that abandoned animals wouldn't be forgotten. It was a small gesture, but it spoke volumes about the shift in perspective that had taken place in Milbrook. The town, once closed off and indifferent to the struggles of the unseen, had opened its heart. Atlas had become more than just a dog. He had become a symbol of resilience, of hope, and of the power of compassion. He had proven that even in the most dire circumstances, there was always a way forward. He had saved the kittens, yes, but he had done something even more important. He had saved the people of Milbrook from their own indifference. One evening, after the town's meeting, Sarah stood in front of the clinic, looking out over the street. The sky had turned a deep purple as the sun set behind the hills, casting long shadows across the snow-covered ground. In the distance, she could see Atlas sitting by the clinic window, his posture still proud, his eyes locked on the recovery room where the kittens slept. He hadn't left them since the day they were rescued. The clinic had become a sanctuary, not just for the animals, but for the people of Milbrook as well. It was where they came to witness the miracle of life and healing. It was where they came to learn that compassion didn't have to be confined to the pages of a textbook or the walls of a clinic. Compassion could be shown through action, through a dog's daily vigil, and through the way a community came together to heal. Dr. Sarah Mitchell had always known the power of healing, but she had never seen anything like this before. Atlas had taught her more than any medical book ever could. He had shown her that healing wasn't just about fixing broken bodies. It was about restoring dignity, about offering protection and care to those who needed it most, no matter how small or broken they might be. As Sarah stood there, looking out over the clinic, she felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. She thought of Max, her own dog who had passed away so suddenly. She thought of how Atlas, a dog who had been abandoned and forgotten, had found a way to heal not just the kittens, but her too. And then, as if on cue, she saw Atlas rise from his spot by the window. His body moved with purpose. His gait a little slower, now due to the wear and tear of age and injury, but still full of strength. He approached her slowly, his eyes soft but filled with quiet confidence. When he reached her, he sat at her feet and looked up at her, as if to say, "I've done my job." Now it's your turn. Sarah knelt down and placed her hand gently on his head, feeling the warmth of his fur beneath her fingers. In that moment, she realized that Atlas had given her something she had lost when Max died: hope. He had shown her that there was still good in the world, still purpose in every life. He had reminded her that no matter how much we may hurt, there is always something worth fighting for. "Thank you, Atlas," Sarah whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "Thank you for showing us what it means to love." It had been several weeks since the night the kittens were rescued, and Milbrook had transformed in ways no one could have predicted. Atlas, once a broken hero abandoned by his handler, had become a symbol of resilience and compassion. The town that had once looked the other way now embraced the animals it had once forgotten, and its residents found new meaning in the concept of community. Sarah had seen the change in herself, too. The loss of Max had left an empty space in her heart. But caring for Atlas and the kittens had filled that void in a way she hadn't expected. She had learned that healing wasn't a straightforward path. It was filled with twists, turns, and unexpected moments of grace. Atlas had taught her that the greatest strength didn't come from physical power, but from the strength of commitment and love, the ability to give everything for someone else, even when you had nothing left to give. Now, as spring approached, Sarah stood outside the newly built Milbrook Animal Rehabilitation Center, which had been founded in part by Atlas's story. The center was a state-of-the-art facility that would serve as a model for animal care in the region. But more than that, it was a place where compassion, healing, and education came together to form a new vision of what it meant to care for animals. The dedication ceremony was scheduled for that afternoon, and Sarah was filled with a mixture of pride and humility. The community had rallied around Atlas and the work he had inspired, but it was more than just the success of the center. It was the transformation in the hearts of the people who lived here. Milbrook had learned, through one dog's simple yet powerful example, that love could heal not just individuals, but entire communities. As Sarah walked into the center, Atlas followed her, his presence as dignified as ever. His gray muzzle and slower gait betrayed the years he had spent serving, but his eyes still shone with purpose. He moved quietly through the center, his head held high, as if to say, "This is my legacy. This is what I've given." Inside the building, the kittens who had once been so fragile were now thriving. They had been adopted into loving homes, their health restored by the collective care of Sarah and the community. But even more than their physical recovery, they had given something back to the town, a new understanding of empathy, of connection, and of the importance of caring for those who cannot care for themselves. The opening ceremony was held in the center's main hall, where a crowd of local residents, veterinarians, animal welfare advocates, and media representatives had gathered. Sarah stood at the podium, looking out at the sea of faces, each one reflecting the hope and transformation that had taken place over the past few months. "Thank you all for being here today," Sarah began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "We stand here today because of one dog, Atlas, and the incredible love and dedication he showed us all. His journey has been one of unimaginable hardship, but through it, he has given us a gift, a lesson in compassion, sacrifice, and the power of purpose." She paused, glancing down at Atlas, who sat beside her, his eyes locked on hers with an understanding that transcended words. Atlas showed us that healing isn't just about fixing what's broken. It's about showing up every day, even when it's hard, even when it hurts, and giving everything you have for someone who needs it. His mission was never about recognition or reward. It was about protecting life, no matter the cost. The crowd was silent, listening intently as Sarah spoke, but it wasn't just her words that moved them. It was the presence of Atlas, the dog who had made all of this possible, sitting calmly beside her, his head held high. Sarah continued, "We've learned that true service comes not from what you're trained to do, but from the heart. Atlas has given us a new perspective on what it means to serve, to care, and to love. He's shown us that we all have something to give, no matter our past or our limitations. As she spoke, Sarah's mind drifted back to the lessons Atlas had taught her, the importance of not just caring for the physical needs of those in her charge, but of offering them the respect and dignity they deserved. Atlas had not just saved the kittens, he had saved her. He had helped her move beyond her own grief. Or for the new center, but for Atlas, who had been the catalyst for this change, whose silent vigil had sparked a revolution in how the town of Milbrook cared for its animals. As Sarah stepped down from the podium, Atlas stood and moved toward the door of the center. He had done his part. It was time for him to rest. But as he passed through the doorway, he stopped for a moment, looking back at the crowd. His eyes met Sarah's, and she smiled softly. In that brief exchange, Sarah understood something profound. Atlas wasn't leaving. He had done what he was meant to do, and now he would continue to live out his legacy in quiet, dignified service. The door closed softly behind him, and the ceremony continued. But Milbrook had changed forever. The story of one dog's dedication had touched the hearts of many, and in the days, months, and years to come, the town would carry that lesson with them. Atlas had shown them that there was no such thing as a life too small to matter, and no such thing as a heart too broken to heal. As the sun set over Milbrook, casting a warm golden light over the newly opened rehabilitation center, Sarah stood on the steps, watching the last rays of the day stretch long across the horizon. She thought of Max, of the lost years, of the grief that had nearly consumed her, and she realized that Atlas had not only restored the lives of those kittens, but had restored her own sense of purpose. She had learned that in giving, we find ourselves, and in serving, we heal. As we reflect on Atlas's journey, we are reminded that true healing comes from the heart. It's not about our past or our limitations. It's about the love and commitment we show to others, especially those who need it most. Atlas's legacy teaches us that even in our darkest moments, there is purpose and light to be found. His story is a testament to the transformative power of compassion and the profound impact one life can have on an entire community. What did you think of Atlas's story? Do you have a dog who has made a difference in your life? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to the HeartForce channel for more inspiring stories like this one. We look forward to hearing from you.